Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the Indicator 14 Post-School Outcomes Informational Webinar. We appreciate your time. We know it's a busy time of year, and we really do appreciate you being here to learn more information to survey your students. My name is Lori Chestnut, and I'm the Secondary Transition Specialist in Special Education Services at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. And with me, we have Ginger, and I'll let Ginger introduce herself.
Hi everyone, Ginger Elliott T. I help manage the data collections for Indicator 14 and other secondary data outcomes. And we would like to introduce Carol and Catherine. They work with the contract that does the surveying for us to collect the Indicator 14 data if districts choose not to ask their own questions. So Carol is going to present some information for you about what that would mean at the district level. So feel free to ask any of us questions during the presentation, and we are happy to assist. Glad you are here. Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Oakley, and I'm the researcher at Data Driven Enterprises. I'm based out of Brighton, Colorado. Data Driven Enterprises is contracted with the Oklahoma State Department of Education to collect the Indicator 14 post-school outcomes data. So the Indicator 14 post-school outcomes data collection is when students with disabilities who either graduated, dropped out, or aged out the year before are called and asked about their education, training, and employment experiences. In the past, professional interviewers were hired to make these calls for all districts. Oklahoma offered districts the option to make the calls. A group of 9 districts opted in to do the calls last year. This opportunity is available for districts again this year. As you might imagine, if an ex-Dane student receives a voicemail from a professional interviewer, they might be unlikely to pick up the phone when the interviewer calls again. However, if an ex-Dane student receives a voicemail from someone they know from their high school, they are much more likely to answer the phone call. So why should your district opt in? First, to get a higher response rate. Typically, the response rate for states that do their own calls is above 65% compared to around 25% when done by professional interviewers. The 9 districts in Oklahoma who opted in to do their own calls last year had a 67% response rate compared to only 11% of those completed by professional interviewers. A second reason that your district should opt in is to learn the stories behind numbers. In addition to a higher response rate, one of the best benefits of making the calls yourself is that you get to hear the stories behind the numbers. You can find out firsthand and get a more detailed, qualitative picture of what your students with disabilities have been doing since high school, rather than if you only get a numeric-based report. You will also gain insight to potential areas of improvement at your high schools for students with disabilities. Lastly, state accountability for Indicator 14 is increasing. Response rates will be reported in the district data profiles. Districts that opted in were asked what they would tell other districts that are interested in opting in. Here are their responses. Lori, are there any individuals from last year's opt-in districts on the webinar who would like to share any additional insights?
That's a great question, Carol. I'm looking at the participants. If you opted in last year and you have something to share, please feel free to unmute or type your responses in the chat and I will read them. I'm not seeing anything right now in the chat, but we still have some people joining us. So if you have something that you think of about opting in last year, just feel free to type it in the chat and we will share as we go along.
Okay. So districts that opted in were also asked what worked for doing the interviews. Districts that opted in were asked about challenges and possible solutions. You can start calling and interviewing students on June 15th. The window ends on July 30th. You'll get an email from Data Driven Enterprises with a password-protected call list, a copy of the phone interview protocol, and an instructions FAQ document. So what is the process for doing the calls? Once you receive the materials to do the interviews, you will need to review the phone interview protocol and become familiar with the questions. I would recommend reviewing the instructions FAQ document as well. Then you'll need to decide on a data collection method that works best for you, on paper or directly online in Alchemer. Then you call and interview the students. If you do not reach a student on the first call, we recommend 6 call attempts to each available number. All interview data must be entered into Alchemer. Lastly, once you are finished interviewing or attempting to interview students, you'll need to email the list of student IDs who had a do not call disposition to Data Driven Enterprises. Dispositions are also known as the outcomes of the calls for students for whom you are not able to complete interviews. These do not call dispositions include students who asked to be taken off the call list, who refuse to participate, or who are deceased. This way, we'll know we shouldn't try contacting them again. There is also a voluntary option to track all of your call dispositions for your internal use. I mentioned earlier that you should review and familiarize yourself with a complete phone interview protocol in the instructions FAQ document. This is just so that you can be prepared. I've opened the phone interview protocol and we'll walk through a few things. First, the URL where you need to enter the data in Alchemer is at the top of the protocol. Second, you'll notice that there is generic italicized text in brackets. This information should be customized to your district and the person doing the interview. Next, you'll see red text throughout the protocol. These are notes for you and shouldn't be read to the student during the interview. For example, the first set of highlighted text just indicates that you are providing the answers: student ID, first name, county, district, and your email address. Then on page 2, you'll notice that there is skip logic text that tells you which item to go to next. If you are doing the interview directly in Alchemer, you won't need to worry about the skip logic because it is set up to skip to the correct question automatically based on the answer selected. There are also notes that say, do not read. Do not read these question options to the students. For instance, on question A3A, do not read the options that say don't know or refused. You can still select those options if the student doesn't know or refuses to answer, but don't read it aloud. The protocol is broken into 3 sections: education, employment, and competitive integrated employment questions. Once you are finished, if you need to complete the interview for another student, you can wait for the survey to loop back to the beginning, or you can click the link on the thank you page to start another interview. Now we're going to take a quick look at the instructions FAQ document. This is just a two-page document, but it'll be a helpful reference when doing the interviews. In the first section, you'll find the URL where you need to enter the data in Alchemer. Also, below the link, there are notes regarding how to conduct the call, such as what to do if the student does or does not answer the phone. In the second section, there are instructions regarding call disposition tracking. Please remember to send an email to Catherine Dunlap if any of the students you reach are deceased, asked to be taken off the list, or refuse to participate. You can use the dispositions such as blocked call, disconnected, etc. when calling students, so you can remember if the phone number is working. In the third section, there are instructions related to the survey platform Alchemer. Please remember that text and red should not be read to the interviewee. In the last section, there are frequently asked questions that might be helpful to you. For instance, item 6 asks what to do if the student is not available to talk on the phone because of his/her disability or not being available. You may ask the person on the phone the questions about the student. Acceptable respondents include parents, guardians, and family members. Now we'll take a look at an example of the password protected call list with the students who need to be interviewed for the sample. Again, this will be emailed from Data Driven Enterprises to each individual district that opts in to do calls. It includes phone numbers based on information submitted by the district. The spreadsheet also includes columns for districts to indicate the dates, number dialed, and disposition of up to 6 call attempts. The tracking is for your internal use. It will help you keep track of which numbers for a given student are working or not working. Once all call attempts have been completed, you'll email a list of student IDs with a do not call disposition, such as take me off the list, refuse to participate, or deceased to Data Driven Enterprises. Take a look at the example with dates, numbers dialed, and dispositions filled out. In my attempts to call Mickey Mouse, I tried the cell phone number and reached a voicemail for the first call, and then I tried the cell again and completed the interview on the second call. For Donald Duck, I called the home phone number and I completed the interview on the first call. For Snow White, I tried the cell phone number and there wasn't an answer. Then I tried the work phone number and there wasn't an answer again. Finally, I tried the other phone number and was asked to take her off the list. Snow White's student ID would be sent to Data Driven Enterprises so that we do not try contacting her again. There are a couple of options for interviewing students. You should find what works best for you. The first option is to follow the online interview protocol via Alchemer and record responses online during the interview. Before calling the students, complete questions QA through QE, student state ID, student first name, student district, and your email address. Then, once a student or the person responding to the survey is on the phone, you'll begin interviewing with question 1. The second option is to print out the interview protocol for each student and record the student answers on paper. Once you are finished interviewing the student, you'll enter the responses online in Alchemer. So what if respondents don't know the answer to a question? Respondents can answer don't know, but these responses impact the score the district and state receives on indicator 14. For example, if a respondent says they enrolled in a four-year college but don't know if they completed a term, then the respondent would not be classified as meeting 14A. Another example is if a respondent says they work in an integrated setting but don't know how many hours they worked in a week or for how many days, then the respondent would not be classified as meeting 14B. So if a respondent says, I don't know, we suggest you encourage respondents to provide an accurate answer if at all possible. All student responses must be recorded in the online version of the phone interview protocol via Alchemer, either while you are doing the interview or after the fact if you are printing out the protocol. Now let's see what the protocol looks like in Alchemer. This is what the survey looks like in Alchemer. At the top of the page, there is an instructions button that you can click on to view and download the instructions. These instructions will also be mailed to you along with the call list. The text in red are not meant to be read aloud. They are helpful notes for you. For example, the first note in red directs you to enter the student ID, first name, last name, county, district, and email address for items QA through QE. We recommend pre-filling this information before you attempt calling the student. Then, once the student is on the phone, you'll follow the script and start interviewing the student. Question 1 is just to indicate the person responding to the questions. If a student isn't available or able to do the interview, you may ask that person the questions about the student. Acceptable respondents for the student include parents, guardians, and other family members. At the bottom of the page, there is a next and back button. If you want to go back to the previous page, use the back button and not the arrow at the top of the page. The first section is about education. You'll read the question to the student along with the response options. If a student doesn't know an answer to a question or refuses to answer, you should encourage the student to make a best guess. A don't know response could result in a student not meeting the indicator. However, if the student truly doesn't know or refuses to answer, there are don't know and refused response options available for each item. Let us know if your district would like to opt in. Send an email with the name of your district and a contact name and email to Lori by Friday, May 27th. Are there any additional questions right now?
This is Lori. I was just going to add those districts that are on the call that you have already emailed me to let me know that you are opting in. I do have your name on the list, so you do not need to email me again unless you want to. I'm always happy to hear from our districts. Those of you that are on the call that you're here to get more information, your district is considering it, please email me, like Carol said, and let us know if you're going to opt in before that deadline. We did have a question about, we know some special education teachers or directors that are on the call may not be on contract during that call window. And so the question was, what do we do if we're not on contract? And Ginger responded that we've had other districts that use personnel who are on contract over the summer to make the calls, like a counselor or an administrator. So that is how some of our districts have handled that. You may also be Another option would be, to talk to your administrator, your superintendent, and see if, they could contract with you separately or something, provide a stipend or something like that. But that would be a district decision if you decide to opt in, how you handle that if you're not on contract during that call time. Any other questions? Are we going to post this webinar to the website? We have not talked about posting it to the website, but we are definitely going to be sending out the slide deck as well as a link to the recording and to everyone that has registered today. So those of you that are on the call, and then those that were interested but could not attend due to conflicts. So you will be getting a link in the slide deck. Oh, Ginger just added that, of course, it's also possible to do it on a volunteer basis, if that's appealing to you. Those of you in smaller districts, you probably didn't have that many students that graduated, but that is up to you. What is that deadline again, Carol? The deadline to opt in?
The deadline to opt in
I know you said
is
May
May 27th.
27th. Thank you.
Yeah.
May 27th. All right. When will the districts get their list of students to contact?
Hi, this is Catherine Dunlap. You'll get the list right before the call window starts, about a week beforehand.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay. We will stay on for just a couple of minutes to ask additional questions, but if you have all your questions answered, feel free to go ahead and, exit. We know you have busy schedules, but we'll stay on just for a couple of more minutes. Oh, thank you, Kim Bryant in the chat. She was one of our districts that shared last year, and she said, it's definitely worth it to me because we are very small. We are a very small district. It doesn't take long to contact each, and they all actually still live close. So thank you for that. And I'm sure they were super excited to hear. Kids don't always show us when they're still in school that they appreciate us, but they really do. And those relationships matter. So I'm sure that they are thrilled when a former teacher or someone from the district reaches out to see what they're doing. We love those stories. The call window is mid-June to the end of July.
The call window is actually June 15th through July 30th.
Oh, thank you for that specific. Yes.
No problem.
Are the students you are calling, is it just recent graduates? So yes, that's a great question. The students that you are calling are the students that graduated, dropped out, or aged out last year. So it is the cohort of 2021. We contact them a year after graduation. So not your class that's getting ready to graduate, the students that you had last year. We call them exiters. Graduated, dropped out, or aged out. What if the phone numbers we have do not work on the list given to us, but we can reach out to them in another way to get an update on contact information? That is a great question. Catherine or Carol, do you want to answer that one, or do you want us to?
For other states, sometimes if you can find a different way to contact them, like if you have a smaller district, Other states are fine with it as well, reaching out to them in person or by text to see if they're willing to do the interview. We're fine with it if you guys are. That would be fine with us.
I'm fine with it. However, you can contact them. Just make sure you're following, that protocol and reading the questions like Carol explained today. But we're fine with it. Hopefully you've seen the Indicator 14 guidance brief. I'll send that out in the email as well in case you have not. But we are asking districts to update their contact information because we rely, on the districts and that contact information being current. So absolutely, if you know a way to get a hold of them, please do so. Is this for all IEP and 504 students? So for the Indicator 14 data that we collect, it is only for students who were on individualized education programs or IEPs. Now, if you as a district, want to contact your 504 students just to see and, how they're doing, that would be, a district decision. But the data that we're collecting is only for students on IEPs. That's what we have to report to the OSEP, Office of Special Education Programs. Can a parent answer the questions if the student is not available? Yes. Great questions. Thank you so much. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions at this time. So we will go ahead and sign off. And we gave you guys, I wasn't sure how long this was going to take, so I scheduled it for a little bit longer. So we are giving you back some of your day. Hopefully you'll be able to grab a bite to eat. Thank you again for your time. And thank you to those that have already agreed to opt in. We are so excited. We've had low response rates for many years. And so we have a goal to get to 30%. And with you agreeing to opt in, I know that we're not only going to meet that goal, but exceed it. So thank you so much for your consideration and for your time and for agreeing to contact your former students. Carol, do you have anything else that we forgot?
Just so you can contact Data Driven Enterprises for any technical questions and the State Department for content questions.
Perfect. Yes.
Mhm.
And once you do, we've had it only happen a couple of times, but once you do start calling, if they start questioning like, who is this and who are you? They can contact me or, and I can tell a parent or a student, that, hey, this is, we really are collecting this data and this is legit. That won't happen if they know you, but sometimes that happens when someone from Data Driven Enterprises happens. But you can start to let your current seniors know that they will be contacted next year. So we're starting to, start those conversations so they'll be familiar with it. All right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.